from the News Channel 5 network. This is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you're with us tonight. It's Tuesday, March 2nd. We're into March 2021, the day before the tornadoes hit last year. That day really was the beginning of all of the craziness in 2020. So we mark that anniversary certainly tomorrow. But tonight we're talking about a pretty controversial topic. I encourage you to call in with your thoughts. I bet many of you have thoughts. Should college students be stopped from kneeling during the national anthem? Republican senators, state senators say yes. They have sent a letter. Here it is, right here. They've sent a letter to every college chancellor and president saying basically when students don the jersey of a Tennessee university, they step out of their personal roles and into the role of ambassador for the state, basically telling these presidents and chancellors to find a way to stop these students from kneeling during the national anthem. We invited anybody who signed this letter to come on. They were unable to come on, but there are some who have some concerns about this letter. And so, again, we try to get both sides. We are happy to have with us, though, Representative Vincent Dixie, Democrat from Nashville. Representative Dixie, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Well, so, all right, you understand the issue here. There's this letter that I just discussed written by all the senators here in Tennessee to all of the chancellors and presidents saying students should basically be mandated to not kneel during the national anthem. Be told you can't do that, essentially. What do you think?
It's a typical Republican response. They're for the First Amendment until they're not. They want to use something until it doesn't benefit them. I think, especially in college, that's where we go to find ourselves, right? That's where we go to figure out what we want to do with the rest of our lives. That's where we start to begin our ideals and values and things that we want to advocate for and move forward. And these young men and women, during this time, they are expressing their views about something that they have some displeasure about. They may not know the best way to do it, but they know that they have some displeasure about something that's happening in this world and they want to make a difference. And in their mind, in my mind and in their mind, they accomplished what they did. They accomplished their goal. Their goal was to get people to talk about the issue. That's what we did. Now we take it to the next step. What we don't try to quiet them or hide their voices because we don't like what they have to say.
And yeah, so what these Republican senators said in the letter, we expect all of those who walk onto the field of play representing our universities to also walk onto the field of play to show respect for our national anthem. And they're essentially saying they give up their right to protest when they wear the uniform of a public university in Tennessee. Do you? I don't think you agree with that, or what do you think when you hear that?
That's upsetting because they're saying there's a time frame of when you can actually advocate for something, or you can really express your First Amendment rights. So you can only express them after 4:30 after the school day. But you are basically, once you sign to the school, you are the school's property. That's what they're saying. You are a product. Your job is to play basketball, play football, participate in whatever sport. Forget whatever you believe in, because we want you, as we've heard many times, especially in professional sports, when a professional athlete speaks out, they say, just shut up and shoot the ball or dribble the ball. But these kids are more than that. A high majority of these kids will not become professional sports athletes, but they will be productive citizens in the United States. And they have an opportunity, they have a right to express their thoughts and their concerns with what was going on. And I'm really appalled by this because what happened on January 6th was a result of people wanting to express their First Amendment rights. That's what they say, but that was really truly an attack on democracy. And I challenged anybody who are upset about why they knelt, why the kids were kneeling, to tell me why they were kneeling. I want to know, if you can express to me why they were kneeling, I think we could get to the root cause of this and I don't want to hear the disrespecting the flag. It's this and it's that. Tell me why they were kneeling, and then we can start the conversation from there.
That's what you said when this came up in the legislature. Essentially, I read, at least that's what you're reported as saying, that this should spark a conversation. It shouldn't spark just set this aside or some mandate to not protest. It should spark a conversation about how do we make things different? How do we get to a point where they don't feel the need to kneel? Now, the other side is, well, the national anthem is a symbol of pride for our country, and this is kind of stomping on that symbol of pride. And I'll let you address that in a moment, and maybe you kind of did, but you feel like this is an opportunity to speak to bigger issues, as opposed to just say, hey, don't kneel. You think we can talk about bigger issues here, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And, there's laws against forcing people to kneel, especially students to kneel. It was went to the Supreme Court again in 1939, or I think it's around that time. You can't force a student to kneel or stand for the national anthem. And we have to respect that what makes this country great is that we have differences, but we're supposed to come together in order for a common cause. And I think that's getting lost in the wash here. People it's become, when you say, it's a very touchy subject when you say our heritage, our flag. It's disrespectful to this, but especially when you think about how this country was built. And I just think that we have a long way to go in race relations in this country. And in Tennessee is specifically because it seems like, well, we are in a super minority when it comes to Democrats. And we see that when you have a super majority, it's not good for anybody, because what happens, we get a lot of these bad bills that are getting crammed down our throats. So like right now, we're dealing with bills that the GOP are cramming down our throats. And it does nothing to put money into the pockets of Tennesseans. It does nothing to put food on their table. It does nothing to make sure that if they get sick, that they can go to a doctor, to see a doctor and get access to quality health care. But we're solving problems that we're finding solutions for problems that don't exist right now.
So do you think this letter was unnecessary? I think there were a lot of people who called and were concerned when they saw this. But do you think this is, obviously you think this is the wrong response? What should lawmakers be doing? What should Republican lawmakers be doing?
When it comes to that letter, I think that there was nothing that they needed to address at that point. If they wanted, instead of trying to put public pressure on the university president, so let's find a way to address what some of those concerns are. And two of the lawmakers are from that area and represent that area of East Tennessee, where the university is located. We're in that committee. And my point is that you were there. These are your constituents. Are you listening to your constituents? Are you using personal preference? Or just what you believe and you're pressing it on, pushing it on everyone? But I think that we have to do better in Tennessee if we're going to make Tennessee. We're last in everything. We're last in voter turnout. We're damn near last in I said a curse word. I'm sorry about that. But I think that
one's okay. I wouldn't encourage you to say, I think that one is okay though.
Okay.
That one's okay.
I won't drop it.
But go ahead.
But we're ranked in the 40s in education, so we're not doing anything to build up our future generations in order for them to be productive citizens and make Tennessee great.
Have you heard any talk about cutting funding if they don't? I mean, in the letter, again, it says, we encourage each of you, talking to the chancellors and presidents, to adopt policies within your respective athletic departments to prohibit any such actions moving forward. So they're saying come up with policies that prevent student athletes from kneeling during the national anthem. Do you think they would cut funding? Has there been any talk of that?
I would be surprised if they could. Put it this way. They're in the super majority. If they could, they would, right? They wouldn't have just written a letter. They would have proposed some sort of law, some draconian law, in order to set universities back and move forward with this. So there's really, it's upsetting that all 27 of the Republican senators signed that letter, because I think they just, without conversation, without anything, they just said, this is what we're going to do. This is very indicative of how they govern. This is what we're going to do. Regard of what happens on the other side, this is what we're going to do, and you're going to like it.
Well, let me read a couple other things Republicans said, and I'll have you, and then I'm going to start taking calls. If they are practicing their First Amendment right and just kneeling in protest, why don't they kneel at halftime or the end of the game? Why during our national anthem? So the concern there is they shouldn't do it during the national anthem.
I would say, where is it written that we have to play the national anthem before any sporting event? It's just tradition, right? It's just what it's always just been done. There's nothing written to do that. So if it's so offensive, why do we even play it to begin with if you don't want people to express their point of view? The reason why they take the knee at the beginning of the game, because that's when the most people are watching. That's why they want to make the most, bring the most attention to whatever issue that they're advocating for. So it doesn't necessarily have the impact. And I think that question really could answer themselves. It's like, yes, I just hate that the focus is on kneeling and not finding a solution to why they're kneeling.
Yeah, and that's been the case. It's been on kneeling for a long time. And do you think we can get past this? I mean, this is one of those issues, I don't know, it seems like both sides have kind of entrenched, and I don't know. Is it an effective form of protest now, in your opinion?
We're talking about it.
Yeah, we are.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So now, everything starts with even how a bill becomes a law. That's how it starts off, with the conversation, with an idea. It starts off with someone talking about something. Then it grows into a bill. It grows into legislation. So maybe we can find some common ground here. I come from a military family. My father was in the Air Force. My brother was retired from the Air Force. My other brother was in the Navy. So you can't say that people don't respect this country or don't respect the flag. The country it's people in this country that don't respect people that look like me or what we stand for. That's why people are kneeling. They're tired of getting shot down, being target practice, and not getting the same equitable chance that other people that are non-black, that they get in this country. That's the issue. We're tired of being target practice. So if we can talk about how we can, even addition about, it's not even, I mean, it is about shooting black people in the country at an alarming rate, but also just even in the criminal justice system about how we get sentenced more or longer sentence and harsher sentences than our white counterparts. So let's start that conversation. How can we bring it down and make it even for everybody?
I'm going to start taking some calls now. And again, we ask anybody who signed this letter to come on. They were unable to come on. So let's just start taking calls. Let's go to Ron. Hello, Ron.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. The way I feel, that there's a time and place for everything. I've served my country. I've been to foreign countries, been pretty much around the world. He was talking about traditions. It started back when our forefathers started this place, moved in here and done what they had to do. I just, as I said, there's a time and place for everything, and I don't feel like, if you're watching sports, you ought to be watching sports. Take the political thing somewhere else, or your disagreement with whatever's going on. The last thing I can say is the way I've always been taught: stand for the flag and kneel for the cross. That's pretty much all I can say. Love everybody. I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, or whatever, but that's just the way I feel. Y'all have a good night.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your call. He's not going to be alone. I mean, that's going to be what a lot of people are going to say. So what do you say to that?
Ron, I really appreciate his thoughts, and I feel like Ron is probably tired and exhausted of this conversation too. I can just hear it in his voice. He's like, let's move on. But where is the time and the place? When is the right time to do it? We here passed a law. The governor and his General Assembly passed laws that you can't even protest outside the Capitol without fear of maybe getting arrested or catching a felony or anything that's going on in that nature. So when is the right time to protest? There is no right time to call out an injustice. You just do it when the time presents itself. And yes, and if you are there I think that's one of those things that if we have the most people that's there watching it, that's the time in order to bring attention to it. So I would hope that people could get past that and Ron, I really, really feel that he's probably tired of this and he wants to find a solution to this. And he said he loves everybody. We love everybody too, but we want to make sure that it's expressed as we in our daily lives. And it goes way beyond just the sporting event. It goes on to any lives. But sporting events historically have brought us together. And that's probably been probably some of the most unifying events that's our sports events and even the tornado that you made mention of earlier. I saw the best come out in Nashville during that time, the best. And then just a few months later, we had the George Floyd incident, and then we saw the worst come out in everybody. How could we go to such extremes in 2 months? So we have to remember that goodness is in here somewhere, and we just have to make sure that my job is to take care of you, is to protect and love my brother. And I want people to understand that that's where we need to go with this.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Lucy. Lucy, are you there?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Let me mute my TV here. Yes, I come from a military family, and I've held my hand up personally twice and sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States in my work with the government. And when I was a little girl, the only time I heard the National Anthem is when we were at a military event. And my dad told me then, no, you don't have to stand up. I stand up, and he saluted. Now, usually that went on when the flag came by in a procession when they did the National Anthem. There is nothing about a national anthem in our Constitution. It's barely been over 100 years that they set the poem to music. So I got 3 points here that I want to address. I don't know if you're a congressman or senator or what your position is.
State representative. He's state representative.
Okay, state representative.
I appreciate
you might be too young to remember the Curt Flood case. This was a case where it led to free agencies for athletes. Curt Flood, being black, the Supreme Court agreed with him that no man could own another man. These sports teams, you weren't their property, but they wouldn't help them. It wasn't until a white guy took up the same issue and fought the same way that Curt Flood did that he proved that these athletes were not property of their owners. Now, those are private companies. The NFL is a private company. The state of Tennessee is not a private company. I do not know why our state legislature is not looking at the Ninth Amendment. James Madison said that the Ninth Amendment was reserved for rights that weren't spelled out in the Constitution to protect its citizens from the tyranny of the states. This protected us from the states' rights. And I see these Republicans going from one end, states' rights 1 minute, into federalist, nationalistic argument the next. They go back and forth on this. And when you say that you're an ambassador of the people, these kids are from ETSU. Ask the atomic veterans, the Tennessee National Guard atomic veterans, if you can find one still alive, how the state represented them. And they were uniformed personnel. And then when we sent, I think it was our National Guard to Somalia a few years ago, they misrepresented Tennessee by some of the stuff that they had done there when it came to child sex trafficking and exposure of classified information to foreign nationals.
Wow, okay, all right.
And one last point.
Okay.
Our senators, our federal senators, they are representative and ambassadors of the people. Paul Rywick, in the senator from another state, talked about the Foley Page scandal with the little boys. And he said that people knew for years that Foley was a homosexual, and they should have got rid of him. But who stood up for him? Another pedophile, Hazard, and then our own Senator Bill Frist. So who represented the children? So this ambassador crap is a joke. They use these athletes to make money. They exploit their youth, and they got sports betting now.
Right.
But then they're going to tell them how to think. It's wrong. I say stand up, and if y'all ever play a game here in the Middle Tennessee area, I'll be right down there with you. Thank you for listening.
Lucy's a pro. Lucy knew immediately to mute her TV. That was great. And then had a lot to say. There's a lot to say. And it sounds like she agrees with you here.
It sounds like Lucy's going to be running for office pretty soon.
Yeah, she probably could.
I don't know where she lives, but she's very appropriate. But one thing that I do agree with, this country was born of, because brought on by protests, right? This country was born of protests. And even if you go back to the civil rights, they didn't just one day wake up and say, we're going to give black people the right to vote. It was done through protest, because in order for something to happen, there's a quote, I think it's the 2016 women's Olympic team. They said, positive change doesn't happen unless it has to. Nobody's just going to give up the power because they feel like, oh, you know what? I think that I need to give these people a chance. I think they should be treated equal at this point. Now, we still have a long way to go here. We're working, but it seemed like these last few years, we've moved backwards as a people, especially in this state. So it's how can we move forward? How can we make sure that we don't go backwards to the 1960s? But I think that sometimes, and I know I may be getting off subject a little bit here, but bear with me. I have two daughters that they're 14 and 16, but I always try to tell them that you have history right next to you, right? If your grandfather, when he was born, he was 25 years old before he got the right to vote. He was a man. He had been to Vietnam twice and still could not vote. But so I want you to understand that when we're teaching history and we say these things, and to them, civil rights movement may as well been 150 years ago, because that's how it's taught in schools, that it happened so long ago instead of 50 years ago. You can touch somebody right here that you see every day that did not have the right to vote. They couldn't have some of the friends that you have, some of the freedoms that you have right now, when he was a grown man and had served his country twice. So if he's not offended by someone kneeling on a flag to spark a conversation that says that we should stop killing Black people at an alarming rate, let's look at what is the inherent biases. So if he doesn't have a problem with it, that's how it causes the disconnect of why someone could say they're upset with it. He gave the ultimate sacrifice. He was willing to give his life for a country he couldn't even vote in, that he wasn't respected, but he did. And so I find it offensive that when people say, oh, you're disrespecting the flag. Talk to him about disrespect and see what he has to say about it.
That's fascinating. So he served twice in Vietnam, came home, could not vote.
He was 25 years old.
Wow.
Before he could vote.
All right, and see, that shows progress. But I guess that's why this is good to talk about. I think that's great. You tell your kids that. There has been progress, but there is still more to do. And I think some people look at, wow, we've come so far, we're done. And you're saying, no, we're not done. We're not done. Yeah, we've made progress, but we're not done. And it's okay to still have these conversations. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, it is, because slavery lasted a long time, right? And it caused a lot of trauma mentally and generational things that's going on. So, and it happened for 200 years. So we're only really 50 years beyond that. So we're still in this infancy stage. So it's that the people that had those same thoughts that were civil rights, some of them still living, but it goes on to your generation. Like, for instance, when I raise my children right now, I'm raising them because I know that I'm really raising my grandkids, because my children are going to raise their kids the way that I'm raising them, right? They're going to take some of the good, some of the bad, but that's what I'm gonna raise. So we have to make sure that when you raise your kids now, that you're teaching your grandkids. What do you want your grandkids? What world do you want them to live in?
Wow.
An inclusive one?
Yeah. All right. We have to take a break. We have a bunch of calls. So we're going to take a break, and I'm going to start getting the calls. We'll take calls right after this.